All right, without further ado, I want to welcome Stephen and Jerry to the stage to talk about 3D printing and their business.
Wait till we get this up. Well, we are Spectra 3D Technologies. We're located in Weaverville, North Carolina. We are Asheville's, well, we're Western North Carolina's largest 3D printing company.
Keep going.
Go ahead. Yeah. So we make cool shit. There's a few samples that we have up here in front of us, and I'll just go through this as we have 10 minutes, but our mission is to be the catalyst for the adoption of 3D printing in industrial applications. So we specialize in industrial work, but we do fun stuff. And Jerry will talk about the fun stuff after I get down. So our story is I founded the company in 1989 out of my house in New York when I was living with my parents after I graduated college. Like most of us, we didn't really know where we were going, what we were doing, so I said, I want a business that I can do 3D animation and some design. So that lasted as a side business till 2007. I moved up to Asheville and couldn't find work. Found a design job for Volvo construction equipment. Does anybody remember when they were here? They didn't last very long in 2008. So I decided to go back to school, went to AV Tech, got into the AV Tech business, small business incubator, and things started rolling from there. I've been a trainer for 30 years for Autodesk software, so 3D animation software, design software. And we had a client that we picked up, and in 2012 we started with 3D printer sales and working with this client doing 3D software training. In 2015, the company came to us and said, we want to buy out because we're spending way too much money with you and we can do it ourselves. So I gave them a number and they said, we don't want to buy that. So what they did was they hired me and my staff away from the company. So January 1st of 2016, we went from 7 employees to 0. And in March of 2016, Jerry came on, and we've never looked back. Well, he's never looked back, because I just came on last September again. So in September of last year, I came back on full time. I was just doing part-time, helping out with the books, providing some funding, and keeping us moving. And Jerry did all the work. Next slide. So my name is Stephen Shane. I'm the founder. Again, started the company. I have my first exit was in 2016. My background is in mechanical design, 3D animation, and business development. And I got into 3D printing way back in 1993 or 94 with a job for the Coast Guard. And then Jerry will be talking in a minute. His background is in production, marketing, sales, and also has a lot of experience in 3D printing. That was how we met. We met at an AV Tech class that I was giving on design for 3D printing, and he was bringing some really cool stuff to the class. I was like, this is great. So in 2016, I asked him, like, do you want to run a company? I can't pay you. I'll give you a good one. You can have the title. Next. So the challenges that we've faced and we still face are really the same that I've encountered with a lot of companies, especially with COVID. Our biggest challenge for us as non-marketing people is marketing. All of our business so far has come from word of mouth that came from a seed that Jerry will talk about. And it has just grown from there. For us, cash flow is killing us. Like, cash flow for us is probably our biggest challenge. And with COVID and the downturn with COVID, we were hit a year after everybody else. And we're now starting to see ourselves come out of it. So that's good. There's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. In time, I mean, you know, I love 40-hour days and 9-day weeks, but can't do it that way. So, thanks. So this is what we do today. We're primarily a 3D printing company, but we also provide 3D design services for entrepreneurs and people who need 3D parts. We did get a couple of 3D scanners lately, and we're now starting to offer that as a service to be able to 3D scan something. So if you have a part and you say, I need this, we can scan it and 3D print it. So it's something that we're getting into that's kind of cool. We also do resin casting, and we've got some giveaways, and these are on our Etsy store, and these are little pocket tools. We do resin casting for this. This is a glow-in-the-dark horn that's on a 3D printed unicorn that's resin cast. And then we're a research and development arm for companies around that need 3D printing. So we help them out to get into 3D printing, fix their printers if they need it, just get them up to speed on how to do it. And a lot of times we've had customers that have come back to us. They bought a 3D printer, they didn't know how to use it, we've helped them, and then they've come back to us and said, you know, it's a lot more work than we thought it was going to be. Next. So what do we bring as a 3D printing company to our customers? Number one, right now, is supply chain issues. So we can bring a fix to the supply chain. So you don't need to get production done overseas. If you have 50 items you need, and you need them in a week or two, we can 3D print 50 parts. There's a company, these parts are for a company in Hendersonville called Damp Chaser. And we do 2,000 parts on, every other month. So we can provide that. Next, I'm going to transfer this to Jerry. And these are some of our customers. And Jerry, take it over.
Well, Jerry, quick backstory before I went to work with Steve. I worked for a government contractor for 4 years. In September of 2015, I quit and went to work myself. Scariest thing I ever did, best thing I ever did. Got involved with Steve, 3D printing. You go to the next slide. So the things that we do is a large pump and valve manufacturer came in. We were running this in my house in my bedroom for the first year. He came in there and handed this to me and said, I need you to make this. So I was like, sure. Didn't know what I was doing. It's an industrial part. When you print this, it's got to be perfect. It took us 6 months to get this right, and we were one of the first ones in the casting industry to come up with this deal as far as printing these instead of making wax patterns, and this is wax. All that Spectra cast. It's on my head. You can go to the next one. Typically, they go from design from the foundry. They will then machine an aluminum mold, do then cast wax patterns, and then melt out to make a metal product. We cut out the machining of the molds and the wax pattern. We actually make the actual one-to-one piece. And they take this and they cast that in metal. It saves them time and $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in the mold making process. Okay, services we offer, patterns, jigs, fixtures is a big thing around here. There's a lot of manufacturers in Asheville. We make jigs and fixtures as a big part of manufacturing. We come up with different ways to help them out for that. New prototypes. You got the next one? Let's see there. Some last minute things. So like this is, we printed this in plastic. It's printed and painted from the movie.
That was a red. Troy.
Troy. So the sword he used. So then we went out to a foundry in Minnesota and actually cast the blade of metal. It's in ductile iron. So there's all kind of fun stuff that you can do with casting.
So we have 2 minutes. Can we go back to this one?
Man, I thought it was on.
So this is our growth plan. And over the next couple of years, we're looking to expand into new markets. Medical is a big 3D printing market. And we're also looking at bringing on another full-time person next year. Because Terry and I would like to do other things like growing the business. And the other thing, one of the things that we're looking at doing is actually developing a unified solution for companies. So if a company needs regular 3D printing, it would almost be like a subscription service where they come to us and say, okay, well, we know we're going to need X amount every month of this part. You get on a subscription and you will get those parts shipped to you every month. And it could be one part, could be 5, could be completely customized. That's the other advantage of 3D printing that we can do is every part can be different. Like there's no reason it has to be the same part. There's added cost involved with that. Okay. And then, okay. So this is what we would like to get from everybody here. To just help us get the word out. We have an Etsy store that we are selling the totems through, but it's really just getting traction in the 3D printing world, in the local area for people who need 3D printing. And it doesn't just have to be industrial. So if you have a part that you found on Thingiverse or on the internet, and you just want to get it printed, we can do that too. So, and I guess that's it, right? So I think our last slide is the attention slide.
All right, let's give them all a round of applause.
You want to come up for Q&A? Any questions?
Yeah.
What's the scope of your service? Do you work locally or does it go anywhere?
We ship anywhere in the world.
Yeah, can you talk about the process and the cost and the time involved for do you do prototyping?
Yes.
So now I'm not going to bore you with the whole story, but something going back about 30 years of an idea that the problem I had. Just like that little troll guy there on the table. Someone comes to you and says, I wanted these little troll guys. I just had this sketch on the back of an envelope. Can you give me a prototype? Can you talk about time and cost involved and doing something like that?
Yeah, so this here was an idea I had, and I went to my artist, and she sculpted some clay. And for this particular thing, she sculpted this in clay. I then made a silicone mold of it, and then cast it with urethane with like a pattern of green color. And I made gang molds in silicone, so I can pour once even once, pop it out.
So that's not a 3D.
No, this is actually sculpted. For 3D printing,
It's sculpted, but then 3D printed.
no,
Well,
this
no, that's red.
this is sculpted in cast.
Yeah, it's sculpted in cast. So that actually has no 3D printing involved in it at all.
So this is 3D printing.
Right.
So you would have a designer that would design the, do it in CAD, and we would go ahead and 3D print the part.
Right. So we bill out at $85 an hour for 3D design time. So if you have a part, like as a matter of fact, I'm working on a part this afternoon that is for a customer who's getting a prototype done. And it might take, depending on the complexity of the part, there are some things that can take an hour to design and others that will take, I've got a design I'm working on for a company called Hyderabad that has so far been about 12 to 15 hours of design time. And then we will 3D print that, and total, we tell people estimate about $2,000 to go from nothing to a 3D printed prototype on average for a regular one.
And what's the time?
It really depends. It could take a week to 2 weeks. Some have taken months. So it varies tremendously. Yeah, the Hydropop project has been 6 months.
John Jones.
Hello. Really cool stuff. Thank you for being here. I had a question. I mean, it sounds like you guys know where, like, when you have so many things you're doing, there's obviously things that are higher margin than others. There's things that are higher feed quality. You mentioned subscription service. Do you have those things identified so you can go pursue those? Because you mentioned cash flow is a big issue. And the follow-on question was, like, does the Etsy store fit into actually bolstering those higher margin aspects of your business?
So we started the Etsy store as a hedge against COVID. And in the overall scheme of things, what we decided with the Etsy store was it was just a revenue stream. And it could grow into a significant portion of the business. But probably the highest margin aspect of the business that we have is jigs and fixtures. So that's where we've been focusing our efforts on pursuing business in jigs and fixtures.
It's highest margin, but is it one-off, or do you get, once you make a jig or a fixture, you don't have to make it again, right?
It depends on, like, a company, Jam Chaser, they work on pianos. We make 5,000 of these little jigs they use for whatever they do, like every 2 months. It's a continuing order. So it depends on the customer, how they use them, they break them. Employees break jigs and fixtures all the time. And typically when a company figures, it's a lot of education involved too. So once a company figures out, oh, we can use 3D printing for this instead of having this machine, it's cheaper and quicker. It's like the light bulb goes off and then they find all kinds of things. So education, the client is a big part of it as well.
Sounds like Dan Chaser's like your ideal client. They're breaking stuff all the time.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Copy and paste that.
Yeah, the unfortunate side of that is they're doing so many parts are now and we'll get them injection molded. So we need to replace that with other customers.
Hey, you guys showed a flow earlier where you replaced the center of the flow. And then after that, they then used the 3D printed piece to do the actual die casting. Is that the right word?
Yeah. So this is a good example. So this is just a plastic part that's printed from PLA, which is polylactic acid. It's cornstarch based. It is not biodegradable, as rumors have said. So they'll take this, they'll dip it in ceramic and then burn out the PLA. And this is a very specific, you work with the manufacturer to get this formulation. So like this is a formulation that we have handed. And it burns out super clean. And then they pour whatever metal, titanium in this case, into the cavity to mold it.
So is that something that other 3D printing companies offer as a service also?
Yes.
Is it like a well-known?
It is now. Yeah. When we got into it, we were the only ones doing it.
And it's more so the foundries themselves. We work with a lot of foundries across the country. So we do patterns like this pump casing here. Eventually they'll get a 3D printer and then they'll try it themselves and they always come back to us. So yeah, companies do it themselves. But it's the expertise and you gotta have like a guy all the time doing that and that's all he does. And they don't want to do that. So usually we'll get a 3D printer and just play around with it. That type of thing.
I know there are other groups that do that here, and then I'll pass them on.
I don't think there's anybody in the scale that do it.
No.
If at all.
And nobody does the size of parts that we do. Like these are all small compared to what we normally do. So the other pump casings are about twice this size. So think about a pump casing that's that tall and that wide. And that's where our Spectra process comes in. Good.
Yeah. So I'm curious, I'm Brian, software nerd, so go your IT department. How do you guys manage all your Looking at your technology up here, it's pretty significant, pretty cool. Do you manage it yourself? Do you have an outsourced manager?
I was lucky enough to have a little bit of an IT background. So I mean, we don't have a lot that needs to be connected. We have some of our printers are controlled by Raspberry Pis. We can log into a Raspberry Pi.
They get sticky though, don't
Yeah, they'll drop off every now and again. But there's a program called OctoPrint. And for the smaller printers that we have, it's ideal. The bigger printers, we were using Repetier Post, which is an industrial 3D printing management tool. But yeah, we haven't really had a need yet.
Sometimes Ethernet is the best way.
they? Yeah. Have you found that as you evolve the company that the technology's got better for you, making it easier?
Printers do it, or?
Yeah.
It honestly, in the last couple of years, has not evolved that much. Surprisingly, the technologies that we use FDM and SLA. So FDM is computer-controlled glue gun that prints this. And then SLA is UV cured resin. So it's a different technology. But the technologies themselves have really been around for a long time. I was using SLA back in '93 for the project I worked on. And the FDM printers, other than getting a little bit faster and better quality, the technology hasn't changed dramatically. Like, people are adding bells and whistles. There's a new printer out that has LiDAR built into it to check whether your print is actually going to look good. But it's like, you add all kinds of stuff to the car, it's more to go wrong.
But it's more so the quality of the actual machine has gotten better over the years.
And the last question, how close are we to Star Trek replicator technology?
Depends on what movie you watch. So a really funny, anybody see Ocean's 13?
Yeah.
Okay, so they had a MakerBot, which is like the cheapest, worst quality 3D printer out there. And they replicated a complete diamond necklace on this thing, like perfect, with gold and diamonds and everything. It was like, God, everybody who knew 3D printing in that movie was like, really gross. But yeah, we're very far back. There is a really cool technology that uses video projectors and resin that spins the resin and projects from 3 different angles and will create a part in seconds. I mean, it's like, so far it's this big, but it'll eventually get bigger. So it's kind of cool. Keeping up with the technology is pretty cool stuff.
Anyone on this side there? Look, we've been electing this side. Just out of curiosity with this business, is there any moat around it to make it so if Shapeways gets more investment, they don't stop you? And is there any particular value in being in Western North Carolina? I don't know, labor cost or something like that?
So the key difference between us and Shapeways is Shapeways is sort of jack of all trades, and they have their online store. But Shapeways is extremely expensive. So Shapeways, the cheapest printer they have is probably $100,000. So their capital investment is tremendous. Our most expensive printer can print 2 feet on the side, and that was $16,000. So where we have an advantage is in the ability to compete with them on price. It's not a race to the bottom for us, but it is an advantage that we have because we're a small operation. We can go a little lean if we need to on a project. So that's the differentiator. And then being in Western North Carolina, surprisingly, actually there's quite a bit of an advantage because there's over 800 manufacturers locally, well, within the region. And we've only hit, yeah, maybe a dozen, like of those.
Miss Mallory.
So there's a slide that was like horizontal, and then the middle part was like X'd out, and we kind of glossed over that, but I thought that was an interesting slide.
Can you go back to that?
Oh yeah, it's the first one.
Yeah, it's the one in there.
That went through.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep, no, back down, the next one.
Right there.
Solution for, okay. I feel like y'all should lead with that. Like, that's really powerful to show where your value add is in that whole process. Because that's, pretty significant. You're cutting out those middle steps. And I was just reading about the investment burnout when you guys go to the next slide. And so, again, that's like a really strong value proposition, just that one little nugget there, investment burnout. So I don't know if you want to talk any more about that, but I really think in your customer education process and just pitching it broadly to companies, you should really lead with that side.
It is something that we focus on, especially when we talk to investment casting companies. Any casting company and this slide doesn't show everything that our process offers. So one of the other big deals with being able to 3D print a casting pattern is the ability for a company now to do one. So you think about if you had to do, you spend $40,000 or on something like this, probably $80,000 on a machine aluminum mold. You've got to make your money back on that. If you're doing one or two or three, your cost per part is tremendous. And your costs really don't go down dramatically because you still have to fill up that mold with wax every time you create a cast. And this costs about the same as wax. Just about.
And our cost, yeah.
Yeah. So what the advantage is for customers that are using this for investment casting is the ability to do one-offs, to do custom parts, to do one-offs, to do custom pieces, which they were never really able to do before, unless they had somebody sculpting the wax or machining the wax itself.
It also cuts down weekday, Wednesday, overnight back home, Thursday, they can make it on Friday. Versus having to have the molds machined out of aluminum. It takes weeks sometimes, depending on the molds.
It's almost like printing on demand, like
Yeah.
almost. We're still a few days.
We try and turn everything around within 7 days. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Why isn't that the only thing that you do?
But 3D printing,
No, that.
as far as the patterns,
Yeah.
well, that's kind of how I got started when I decided to go into do like a printers instead of printer system. I got hooked up with a company called FlowCert, and that's when they brought this in my office. At the time, nobody was doing that, so we were kind of the first ones in that industry to start printing patterns with 3D printers. It was a big thing. Zach, I had a lot of connections. I traveled all over the country doing foundries. In that field, it's teaching old dogs new tricks because it's a bunch of old guys. The industry has been around forever. They do things a certain way. Trying to get them to switch was hard. It took a while. But once the foundries got it, they got it, and everything made sense. And why we do a lot of that? Because it makes a lot of money. That's a big thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that and then the jigs.
Mhm.
I mean, like that really consolidates your business into something with an extremely clear value prop.
Right, those two things.
And that's something that over the last couple of years we've done. So we were doing sort of the shotgun approach when we started back in 2012, 2014 with 3D printing and 3D printer sales, training. We did a little bit of everything. And we were printing things for people that were just not worth it for us. And when Jerry came on and started doing the investment casting patterns, that was an opportunity opportunity for us to sort of stay focused in that lane. And we've expanded over the last couple of years into jigs and fixtures. The micro manufacturing is also good financially. Now it's just getting the business built and getting more of it in. So with our focus on those three main aspects of 3D printing, that's where we have a strength. And our Spectra cast process, we just named that because we needed a name for it. But that process allows us to 3D print, and this is the process that Jerry spent 6 months on, is how do you cut something and slice and dice it so that you can print it and hold tolerance on a part that's 3 or 4 feet in size. So that's the important part, and that's where a lot of companies tend to fall down, is they try and print these big parts as one big piece. And somewhere in there, the quality is going to suffer. You've got support material. If you're using dissolvable or breakaway supports, you've got additional filament. And then the time that it takes to print that. So this would take a couple of days to print on one printer. And the failure possibilities on something this size are 50-50, to be honest. But when you slice it up and you make it smaller parts, your failure rate goes down to near zero. Your quality goes up, and your ability to deliver something that's 2 to 3 times the size goes up. So that's where, that's another part of what we do that's unique in the 3D printing world. Because most people will cut this into cubes and just print it as cubes, but it doesn't fit. And we don't. We cut it based on the geometry of the part. And that's sort of our secret sauce.
So is that Spectra cast process like protected IP? Is there a way?
It will be trademarked this year. Yeah. So that I already started the trademark process.
And something that came to mind when I was curious if you thought about it as a market to expand into, especially like maybe as a replacement to some of the Etsy work, but vintage restoration market. When you think of like vintage motorcycles, vintage cars, tractors, all that whole of space, right? They have to either search all over the world to find something that has been either salvaged to replace that part, or they have to go through a very expensive process to cast something like that. So is that something that you think that you would fit into?
Yeah, funny brand motorcycle. So we were doing some work for Wonderlic BMW. So they have a tool for taking the main drive gear out of the case, and they can't get the tool anymore. So we went ahead and redesigned that tool, and we 3D resin print those. And they do some custom bike stuff, so we have to scan certain parts from the bike in to make the parts for it. So that's a big thing too. Restoration services, I've made crown moldings that you can't get for contractors.
Now, do you document when you're doing this and creating that as a marketing material to use that as education and outward marketing so people can see like, oh, they've done this, they've solved this problem. What else could they possibly solve for us?
Yeah, some of that stuff we put on our Instagram site, but we haven't done any YouTube videos on that. Like we would like to, but the time it takes away from what we have to do day to day. I, as a 3D designer, have some videos up on my 3D Professor YouTube channel, but I have like a dozen. But it's just the time it takes is time we don't have.
All right, I think we have time for about one more question.
Am I the lucky winner?
You're the winner.
Yeah, make it good. I've got a couple of questions. So, what's your capacity at right now? Like, it sounds like growth is the current aim. So, what's your capacity of production right now?
Right now we have 17 3D printers of varying.
Yeah, I'm looking for like a percentage. We are at 20% capacity, meaning we could add an 80% more capacity to what we're producing right now.
probably about 30 to 40%.
Okay, got it. So plenty of room to grow
Oh, yeah,
capacity,
yeah.
right, in terms of delivery.
Yeah.
It sounded like I'm curious about your ideal customer. You're talking to foundries, right, on the other end of that spectrum there, but you're also talking to manufacturers on the front end of that linear path, right? So who is your customer? Is it the foundry or is it the manufacturer, or both?
It's both.
Yeah, got it.
Right.
And so are you looking at like Meritor or Borg Warner?
We do work for both of those.
Thermo Fisher Scientific?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So you're looking like big manufacturers, not so much the smaller shops.
The smaller shops will tend to give us some work, but the bigger companies need more.
Yeah, you want to fill that 70% with
Right.
that kind of demand from manufacturers. And
Right.
Okay.
We work with a company called T-Drill out of Atlanta,
Mhm.
and we just delivered 21 fixtures for them.
Gotcha.
Actually drove those down to Atlanta yesterday.
Gotcha.
And that also included design work. So we provided the design and the printing of those fixtures.
Sweet. So the last question, thank you for all the answers, is that ideal customer, what's the gap that you know needs filling in order to get more of those manufacturers? Or like, is it education? Do they just not know that this is available?
They just don't know we're here.
They don't know you're here, so they
Right.
know that this is a possibility. They're just like, we didn't know Asheville had a thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. There's sort of the cart and the horse. And the cart is knowing that we're here, and the horse is knowing that 3D printing is available to replace these machine parts.
No. Yeah, so there's both education and
Right.
recognizing that you're right here.
Right.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, let's give